Hi there, viewer. This is Sandy Gladstone speaking. I'm a tech teacher at Northern Secondary School in the TDSB in Toronto. And thank you for joining our slideshow presentation. You're welcome to pause at any time to read the slides that are heavy in text, or otherwise just roll with the flow of the presentation and come back to it later at your own time to read the various pages that have a lot of text. Some slides do have a lot of text because they've got excerpts from the Ontario curriculum. They've got descriptions of the project objectives that were being presented, the student work. And all in all, it's really about showing the student work, not showing a lot of text in detail. But for those of you that want to get deeper into the pedagogical side of it, you're welcome to go back and explore it at your own pace. For the most part, we're going to be looking at student projects for roughly around 8 seconds per slide with music in the background. And for the most part, when the student's work is being presented, I will be completely silent. And it's only when I'm going from course to course with you and project to project that I will pause to make a few remarks here and there. Thank you. The early part of the presentation will be looking a little bit at the history of Northern Secondary School, just to give us a little bit of contextual background about the technical and technological roots of the school. And then we'll be looking at 9 projects in 4 courses. So grade 9 TIJ 1O, as in capital O, not 0, Exploring Technologies. TCJ 2O, which is a grade 10 construction technology. TDJ 2O, which is a grade 10 technological design. And TGJ 2O, which is communications technology, which is graphic design, animation, movies, photography, branding, all kinds of things like that. And we're going to be looking at 9 projects. Candelabras, analog wall clocks, wind turbine blades, bridges, independent enrichment study projects, more clocks, COVID posters, self-portraits, as you can see from the list here. And it's quite impressive, I gotta say. When we talk about the roots of our high school, it has to be mentioned that technology was so much a factor in what the school was meant to provide to the community. And the school itself was a feat of engineering, architecture, and construction prowess that is unheard of in most other instances. They broke ground to build this building in mid-January 1930. And the building was occupied fully with students and staff less than a year later in early September 1930. Built, done, from breaking ground to finished project. And here's an excerpt from an early yearbook describing that. Here we have a photo from September 19th, 1930. So the school had been open for students and staff for 2 weeks at this point. And I'd like to point out a couple of things about this photograph. And I didn't notice this the very first moment I looked at it, but it took me a little while. But there's a horse and buggy in the picture, which is great. And there's a few other little bits and pieces here and there kind of buried in the photo that just make this a delightful early photograph of our high school. Before we move out of the history of the school, I'd like us to pause and be mindful for a moment that living in the wonderful secular parliamentary democracy that we enjoy does not come without the defense of such a lifestyle. And in our hallway, in our foyer, we have plaques commemorating those that died in the Second World War. There are likely others that died in the Korean War, perhaps serving with the UN, perhaps descendants of these very people have been injured or killed in Afghanistan and elsewhere. So we need to remember that. And we need to remember that we ourselves have, for the most part, grown up in a wonderful country free of any real concern of totalitarianism or invasion or chaos or civil war. But let's remember, as we're enjoying all these projects in a few moments, that the very fact that young men and young women can study and be educated and choose their career paths and so on completely at their own will is really remarkable, and we're very fortunate. These names are students from your high school, our high school, who were killed in action or wounded in action or missing in action or prisoners of war. So these are students that either had graduated from NorVoc, Northern Vocational, as it was known at the time, or were possibly even in grade 13 at the time and turning 18, turning 19, maybe even 17 and lying about their age. And it's in part because of them that we have the freedoms that we enjoy in our country today. Your fellow students at Northern who gave their lives and well-being and all of that for future generations. And that's you and that's me. Northern has had a tech department for 91 years. Over those decades, it's focused on certain areas more so than others. And as technology evolves, as the whole concept of STEAM evolves, so too does our school and our tech department. But the principal industries and professions and careers and academic paths that are represented on this slide encompass much of what we do in the tech department. And below you can see the members of the tech department in 2020 to 2021, this past year, as well as our administration, as well as the department heads of departments that work closely with the tech department for all of the objectives that are served by their respective departments. Northern's tech department is STEAM driven. Science, technology, engineering, architecture and art, and math. It's a much more thorough term, acronym, than is STEM. And below you can see a list of some of the many, many future careers and professions and academic and personal interests that you can develop in our various tech courses. And again, I won't go through this entire list, but and it's not entirely all-encompassing, but it covers a wide range. But fundamentally, if somebody has an affinity for certain parts of STEAM and like doing hands-on project-based learning type projects, then the tech department is somewhere that might be great for them. So Northern's tech department is STEAM driven. Within that, when we look at these acronyms, we see that some have different combinations of upper and lowercase letters. The uppercase letter indicating a more profound interest in that element of STEAM. So you can look at that list and the various acronyms and ask yourself, kind of like a Myers-Briggs thing, which combination of letters best represents me? And then down below that are our courses. And they basically fall under the TCs, which is any course starting in T, technology. You've got construction, you've got tech design, you've got transportation, and so forth. Northern's tech department also tangentially is involved with the school's DEM schism. So that's design, engineering, manufacturing. Specialist High Skills Major. These are programs that different TDSB schools and provincial schools offer in focused areas. And we have one of those, and we have 3 schisms at our school. And this particular one has a large center within the tech department. I'll leave this for you to read some other time on your own. I have a few more introductory slides and then we'll be into looking at work, but I do believe it's important to have a good background about everything to do with the work you're about to see. So here you have the major subject areas within the tech department, and then you have a whole bunch of courses. They all start with T because they are tech courses under the Tech Ed Ministry of Education of Ontario curriculum. And anything with a 1 at the end is grade 9, with a 2 is grade 10, with a 3 is grade 11, and with a 4 is grade 12. Some courses have prerequisites, some do not. And in some cases, we're able to waive prerequisites because of other experiences and knowledge. And then at the bottom, you have all of our room numbers. So here's a quick tour of the classrooms, which are primarily servicing the tech department. (123) to 130 run along our south corridor. Our Tech Design Lab room is an interesting classroom because it's got computers around the perimeter and then a large work area in the center, and that's where a lot of the robotics and the coding outcomes and all of that are explored and analyzed. This is another of our ComTech labs. Our woodshop tech lab has a wide variety of hand tools, power tools, floor-mounted machines, all kinds of consumables and secondary equipment and instruments. And we do everything in there to do with STEAM in a very broad sense. And it's a great space, as are all the others. It has the added pleasure of smelling like sawdust and wood, so that's always delightful. Our automotive tech shop continues to improve all the time, and we have 3 hoist bays in place that are all functional, and we have all kinds of tools and equipment, and there's a large classroom area as well as a large independent kind of work area. So all in all, it's a spacious environment within which to study all kinds of TTJ-oriented courses and others. This woodshop tech lab is more focused on larger scale projects, be that sheds or dog houses or sometimes longboards, different things. It all depends what the project's about, but this is where that goes on, and this is also where a lot of the building trades and engineering oriented tasks go on, be that plumbing or electrical wiring and lighting and things like that. This DEM, Schism, and Tech Lab is not yet functional, but it's been part of some of what Principal Marshall sees as a potentially great use for this space. And if that comes to be, then that would be wonderful. But for now, we're just including it as a possibility. Well, viewers, we're getting close to being into the visuals. But before we do, just a little reminder for us all about the nature of our academic year last year. And so in this edited calendar from the Ministry of Ed, you can see the 4 quadrants being the purple, yellow, green, and reddish-orange colors. And that was our year last year. As mentioned, we are presenting about 4 out of our 22 courses within the department, and we hope to present projects from other students and other courses in the future. We regret that not every single project is displayed in this slideshow. We certainly hope to rectify that and get everybody's work in here in the future. Well, that's almost it for the talking. Every project that these students do, these major projects, end with a design brief slideshow where they have to bring it all together with a title slide and a contents page and a project description and a summary of the history of whatever it is they're studying, be it illumination or chronometry or whatever. And then they also gather throughout the project concept drawings and photographs showing the progress and the process of the project. And then they bring it together with the design process and flow charts showing how that's all done. And then they end with observations and conclusions. So all the photographs and all the drawings and everything that you're going to be seeing in this presentation, I will be mostly silent for. It'll just be music if we can get that in. And it's just a matter of seeing these individual or few images and understanding that they are but part of a much bigger thing. And of course, with that goes the knowledge and skills associated with working with wood and with creating models and drawings and digital graphic design projects and all the things that you're going to see. This last slide of this section, this project, has three purposes. One, it shows a candelabra with many candles as opposed to the one that you saw in those wonderful student projects just now. It also is a lesson in proportion and scale by virtue of playing around with the size of the guitar player relative to the size of the object in behind, whereas in reality the person's about 1.7 meters, 1.65, and the candelabras about maybe 40 centimeters wide. And the last important part are all the concepts in that inclusion sign and all the tenets and protocols that are the fundamental basis of how the Woodshop Tech Lab and other tech classrooms operate with regard to the best care and well-being for the student and for the process and for the institution. This next project is also from Quad 1, as was TCJ 2.0 A1 and A2 that we just saw. This is TDJ 201 B1, B2, and that's Technological Design, grade 10. And they are going to be showing you their wall clocks, analog wall clocks, together with their project process and progress photos. So here we go. These are all the parts that you're going to see. When you look at the course description slides in greater detail on your own time, you'll see that I break down the number of hours per 4-day cycle that are either in class or sync learn at home, being virtual. Both A and B, the candelabra and here the wall clock in Quad 1, both of them, students in both classes had the opportunity to be in the classroom for 3 3/4 hours out of a 10-hour 4-day cycle. In this grade 9 Exploring Technologies course, students are with one teacher in one environment, whether that's virtual or in person in school, for a third of the course. So in the case of the 3/3 that I had, we did bridges with one group, we did wind turbine blades with another group, and we did the independent enrichment study projects, the IES project, with the third group. And the details I'll let you read on your own time. So this project was to make a wind turbine blade, to design it, to take into account the history of windmills and wind turbines and wind towers in ancient times, and also to take into account the elements and principles of design. And these photographs and drawings and what have you are pulled from their own photography and from their design brief slideshow project submissions. And then I've given each student one frame where I take something from their projects, sometimes just one image, sometimes multiple, and I put those out to you as a kind of comprehensive, representative example of what their project's all about. The wind turbine blades project was done partially in class, so the students did have about 3 3/4 hours per 4-day cycle in the woodshop tech lab. That was not the case for this next group of projects. Same course, but now completely at home. So all interaction is with the teacher either working from home or at times working from the woodshop tech lab. And there we were able to take advantage of the Hue camera that Principal Marshall and the board were able to provide to teachers. And so it was almost like a cooking class demonstration kind of vibe sometimes, but very productive, tons of fun, very educational. And a shout out to YouTube, because we watched, in addition to just making this project, there's so much more around it, and part of that are loads and loads of YouTube videos. In this third of this grade 9 Exploring Technologies course, students each do an independent enrichment study project on a topic of their choosing, but they have to submit a project proposal that has to be vetted by Ms. Cipollone, who oversees these things and is the guidance department head for this program. And then they have to get assigned to one of the teachers that are teaching this overall rotational course. Based on the topic, they're assigned to one of the teachers involved in the course. And that's how these students got to work with me. This grade 10 construction technology course was again offered for 3 3/4 hours in class in the Woodshop Tech Lab per 10-hour 4-day cycle. Students did a diorama of sorts to proportion, to scale, studying architectural and engineering concepts around foundations and trabeated post and beam construction and arched and barrel vaulted and domed construction and plinths and levels and building up and terrain and topography. And like the other projects, they had to do drawings, they had to research monoliths, they had to research ancient archways of all varieties. We watched many, many, many videos. And we'll start off by looking at a few historical antecedents. Again, many of those through YouTube, and they also show up later on in the students' individual design brief slideshows, which chronicle the entire project from design through construction, fabrication, manufacture, all the way through to testing and observations and conclusions. Here are the objectives in greater detail. And then in the next slide, you'll see some examples of my architectural work from my career. And the examples that are portrayed that were shown to the students have in large measure a lot to do with precisely these same concepts. We're talking about only here they are in situ, and we get to discuss them in the first person. Quadmester 4 was unique in that it was entirely virtual. There was no opportunity for students and teachers to be taking advantage of resources in the classroom. We couldn't even be in the school as a class. Teachers could go in, teachers could teach from school, and we did. Sometimes, not often, but if it was warranted, we did. And this project is the Analogue wall clock and wood mount. Only this class, unlike the first ones you saw in Quadmester 1, Quad 1, all of these students were each given a kit, and they made their projects from home, including the drawings and everything else, and we communicated digitally. The previous slide gave you that excerpt from the Ontario curriculum about the general course objectives, and this slide gives you more of the specifics around both what is to be gained and what is to be explored in this particular project. And here we go. Still in Quad 4, we leave the homemade wall clocks and we move into the digital world of graphic design using Adobe Photoshop and the internet and various other adjunct programs and instruments and tools of a digital and non-digital nature. And the first project we're going to look at is a COVID informational poster, COVID-19 informational poster. And it's all out there for you there in greater detail in terms of the objectives. But suffice to say, how do you blend the visual imagery with the text and the lettering and the words and the message and synergistically bring all of that together and make it some kind of a powerful visual message? In this case, a poster, alternately a magazine advert, a handout, back of a bus, billboard, whatever it might be, but conceptually that idea. In this final project presentation, we are also at the end of Quad 4, and this grade 10 communications technology course is looking at the history of cameras, the history of photography, the history of graphic representation, all the way back to chiseling and early use of shadows and things like that, all the way up to modern day digital SLRs, DSLRs, and mirrorless cameras and lighting, and then also types of photography, portraiture, landscape, and then types of compositions. So the students looked at 4 different distances from the subject to create a portrait, a photograph artwork. 4 different distances. So the tightest one you would get just below the deltoid muscles, kind of across the pecs. And then the next one would be mid-rib, and the third would be mid-thigh, and the fourth would be whole body from in front of the feet to above the head. And then you had 5 postures. So one was looking hard left, oblique left, center, oblique right, hard right. So each student ended up with 20 photographs, and from there they were able to crop and so on. Plus we looked at different kinds of lighting, composition, use of color, all that, elements and principles of design. We were also looking at YouTube videos. We're fond of those, as you know. And we looked at Leni Riefenstahl, Annie Leibovitz, Al Gilbert, Ansel Adams, and others. And we brought all that together with Andy Warhol. And then concurrent with that, they knew it was coming. Students were tasked with making a self-portrait from those 20 plus minus photographs to develop one in an Andy Warhol-esque style. And that is what you will see as our final example. Hang on, here we go. This brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for watching this, listening to me talk. I do hope in the future to add a soundtrack to those portions where I'm not speaking so that we have a little bit of background music to go along with the pictures. It helps to make it flow. But for now, just to make sure that we don't infringe on any music copyrights and what have you, we're just going to leave it with the artwork and the projects and the narration. And thank you so much for your interest. At the end of the day, this whole presentation is about celebrating the successes that our students have had over this past academic year under COVID-19 difficult circumstances, and they've all shone through. And this small presentation is just one way of gathering all that together so that we do have some great memories as we come out of this, because we believe in science. And stay safe, stay healthy, happy, productive, be lifelong learners, and all the best.